Thank you. Anyway, my English is quite understandable from Italians, so because my accent is definitely Italian. Okay, good evening. I will start, as Silvia said, talking about a project related to branding that I developed during the last years. They're quite different somehow, but in the same time they have something in common, a lot of things in common actually. The title for the speech today is Design Has No Boundaries. I started to hate boundaries when I was younger, and I now discover that they actually don't exist in design. And I tell you why. Of course, we have technical boundaries that define different professionals. But in terms of the approach to design, there's no boundaries, in my opinion. And I hope that at the end of this hour, one of you will share my opinion. Okay, I will question 2 or 3 dogma. I call them dogmas, but they are kind of ideas that are circulating throughout the design world. And the first one being the difference between 2D and 3D, so 2 dimensions and 3-dimensional design. And I think that there's no difference in terms of the approach to design. There's no 2D designer, definitely. I'd like to start with this sentence, which has been said by Giancarlo Liprandi, and I hope James will allow me to translate it in this way, because, of course, the sentence has been said in Italian, and I just translated. He said that a book has a length, width, and depth, and the book has weight. And he asked to the audience, isn't that matter of product design, not graphic design? He said this during a meeting in the ADI, which is the Italian Association of Product Designers, actually. The name is Associazione Designer Italiani. And he said that during the 60s, in a meeting, he was representing the graphic designer inside the association, and graphic designers were seen as like the poor brothers among the group of the product designer, interior designer, which were doing a lot of money with, let's say, furniture and other stuff. So he was kind of sick of being considered like the poor brother, and he actually said, okay, but you forget that there's no 2D design, there's no graphic design for a book, because graphic design is product design. And that is something that I totally agree with. I show you a couple of projects, actually 3 projects of book design, the so-called book design, which are part of broader identity projects. First one is related to Fabriano. Fabriano, I don't know how familiar you are with Fabriano is a producer of paper. The history of Fabriano is rooted in the, as you can see, 750 years ago. They started 750 years ago to produce paper in Italy. And last year, no, 2013, 2 years ago, they did this big event related to the 750 years of paper. And we were called, we win a small pitch that they did for designing the identity of this event. And we went out with this logo, which was telling in another way, using the wording, but not the logo of Fabriano, and saying 750 years of paper. This is in Italian. Of course, we had different language, Italian and English, actually, not many different languages for the logo. And so, 1964, no, 2014, last year, not 2 years ago. Okay, this was the logo of the initiative. And I show you this is a very bad picture, but is thanks to who gave it to me. But is interesting for me because this is an icon in Italy. I mean, every person, I mean, when I was a child, this was already like this. I mean, I used to... This designer, I know now that the designer that designed this, I think in the early 70s, something like this, used to be a designer in this school. Anyway, this is like an icon in Italy, and we have the privilege, and it's not really, it's like something difficult to do, to do something on the design of this, come si chiama, blocco, paper block. So we had somehow an honor, but at the same time, I was really preoccupied to do something on this design. I don't even know if I like it. I probably don't like it, but it's so strongly part of my childhood that I can't judge it. So what we decided is to put the logo of the 750 years in a way that was looking like on a different level, like a 3D level. So something like on the design, but not really part of the design. And that's the reason why you see a lot of shadows that normally I hate. Then we designed calendars, the calendar for the year, with different images that they gave us, the Fabriano gave us, of paper used by different artists and designers, and in this case, this is Federico Fellini drawing on Fabriano paper, and Liechtenstein print on Fabriano paper. So they, during the years, collected a lot of material done by different artists on Fabriano paper that really wanted to use Fabriano paper for the quality it has. And this is the monograph, the book that we designed, telling the history of this 750 years. I have this in my hand. I forget sometimes when I go there. Okay. So this is the book. The title of the book is quite strange. It's like Cotton Rabbits and Invisible Watermarks. And is related to the history. So in the beginning, the paper was made in a very different way compared to the way it's done today. So I don't want to make the long history of this book, but I wanted just to show this book as part of a process that starts from a brand identity project. So you can see now a few pictures of the book. They are quite light, so I think that during the whole presentation you will see very poor details, anyway, very small details, because in this picture there's no paper anymore, it's just white. Anyway, I go quickly. The book is like a challenge for a designer, because it's the first time in my life that I did something changing, I think, 8 different kind of paper, using different kind of printing system, ways of printing, so offset, serigraphy, holograms. Everything is done with paper, also for the paper for money. And it's been fantastic, because normally when you go to a client and you ask for a change of paper, so from glossy to matte paper. Okay.
We adjust the
a little bit, yeah. So I can keep saying what I was saying because it's not related to the pictures, but anyway, when you go to a client and you ask for a change of paper, normally the client is a publisher and they don't like change of paper because già meglio, sì. Già meglio, sì, perché si vede se non altro la differenza tra una pagina e l'altra. Sì, 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 grazie. But, c'è qualcuno che mi faceva un segno laggiù. But in this case, the client wanted the change of paper, so it was a challenge because they had all the papers that we could use, so they produced it. What I think is something which is related to all of the project that you can see is something that I want to say in front of this picture. For me, there's no difference between 2D or 3D, analog, digital, space, or paper. For me, the question is both on related to typography and details. For me, good design, good graphic design is related to these two very things. Type design and lettering being like the 70, probably 80% of our job, and details being the rest. Okay, you see there, I also have puntatore. No. Oddio. I could do it myself. Oh. And that was the end of my presentation. Thanks a lot. Have a good night. Ah no. Il puntatore non era quello allora?
Quello in mezzo, non è quello davanti.
Questo qua? Non lo... Ah, sì, sì, sì. Okay, I'll go quite quickly because I think I'm already... Ah, sì, va bene, perfetto. No, sono io che ho schiacciato una roba sbagliata. Talking about book design, this is just a book. Not a big project of identity and whatever. But I brought it with me because the reason why I want to talk about this book is related to the sentence of Giancarlo Liprandi, particularly about weight. The publisher is here tonight, so I'm quite afraid to say things which are not right. But anyway, he's a friend, so he will accept it. The starting point for the project of this book was related to weight. We wanted this book to be light for two reasons. First one is because Beppe Giacobbe, which is the designer, the illustrator and artist, is working mostly for newspapers. So on very cheap paper and light paper. And we wanted to keep that consistency within let's say the material where it normally works and the material of the book. The second reason is a very financial reason is because when books weigh less, they cost less for the expedition, for the delivery. And we did a book before that was really heavy, and we spent a lot for sending it. And so I give it to you so you can just understand what I'm saying. So the main trick here was the weight. So I just show you the book and I go to the next project. It's a wonderful book, so I think you should buy it. So this is for being kind with the publisher. It's a long book with interviews to designers and friends of Beppe Giacobbe, journalists. There's a quite interesting interview with Matteo Bologna. I don't know how many of you know Mucca Design from New York. You don't? You should. And he is the owner and the designer behind Mucca Design in New York. And also Matteo Bologna designed the two typefaces we used for the book. Okay, so I will present now another point for this discussion. Is another dogma is that there's difference between what you do on paper and what you do on the space, on the environment, during an exhibition design project and so on. And I think there's no difference. The problem is this one, is the relationship between these two way of saying, so mise en scène et mise en page. So I put it in English, in French, because in English it doesn't sound really in this way. So to put something on the page is like to put something on a scene, on a stage, on a stage. I keep making mistakes between French and English. So I think that when you do a layout, you do a mise en scène, you do an exhibition design on the page. You decide the balance, you decide the weight, the white and the black, the picture, how much weight has a picture in the page, how much weight and black has the word and the letter and the typeface on the page, and that is mise en scène, is exhibition design. So I show you a few projects of so-called exhibition design, coming from a person that normally does editorial design. This is one of my first projects of exhibition design. I did it on the Triennale in Milan. The client was Elle magazine from New York, and the exhibition was about a book, a catalogue, actually a book that later became the catalogue of the exhibition, that was called No Particular Order, made by Gilles Ben-Simon, which was the art director of, the creative director of Elle magazine in New York. So it was mostly an exhibition about photography. What was strange is that the exhibition was the exhibition of a book. So normally when you do an exhibition, there's like a big show, there's a book that comes later, which is the catalog of the exhibition. In this case, it was the other way around. We had a book and we have to exhibit the book. So what we decided, I worked with Migliore+Servetto, which are a couple of architects working in Milan and doing mostly interior and exhibition design. We decided to pick the book, the pages from the book, and put them on the place. So as you can see here, what we did was just make the pages bigger, mount them on an aluminum foil, and use the bad lightning system of the Triennale, of that place, that part of the Triennale, to create this kind of movement, like the butterfly movement on the wall. And I designed this thread on all around the space to tell about the history related to the book. So it's like the book is there, the pages are there, and the thread that normally keeps together the pages is everywhere in the space. So this is what happened for the exhibition. It was very simple, very also quite cheap in terms of cost. I hope not cheap in terms of design. But really effective. It really had a big effect. And I have to say that I had, for the first time and the last in my life, a compliment from Giorgio Armani, which went to the exhibition and said, "Oh, I love it, it's really nice," which apparently is very rare. So I was really proud of myself. Then I worked for Armani, it didn't tell me anything anyway. Okay, another project, Medaglia d'Oro. This is exhibition and an event that happens any 3 years in the Triennale Milan. The Triennale shows the best project made in Italy and also abroad, internationally, of architecture, and they give a prize to the career of one of the most important architects, Italian architects, and also a prize to the best project in Italy. We were called by the Triennale to design the exhibition. Actually, we were also called to design the identity and the catalogue. There was something already existing that was this logo that is saying Medaglia d'Oro, so gold medal, which is already a problem because if you want to say it to someone in English, you can't write down gold medal because it doesn't work. But anyway, we are more lucky with architecture because the A is architecture also in English. We had this logo done previously by another designer, and we have to keep it. We had to keep it. So we decided to design this A like part of the evolution of that logo. And this is the cover of the book. This is, oops, a few pages of the book. What we decided is to create the DNA of the book with the same elements, and that happens every time we do a project of exhibition and book design together. So the general identity, to create the DNA with very few elements. First one being the color, actually two main colors. Actually, they are three because white, we used white as a color also quite strongly in the exhibition. And we choose this typography, this typeface, which is very strong and very recognizable. And that's the poster around, this was in the Metropolitana, in the subway. So we designed the A, which is already putting in question the idea of 2D and 3D design, because it's on paper, so it's 2D definitely, but it's playing a little bit with the 3 dimensions. And this is the exhibition where we kept the same color coding, same typography, and same if you want, feeling with the book. As you can see, we played a little bit with the dimension here with the shadows. I love the bad lighting system of this part. This is there's a part of the Triennale which is on the main floor, which is hated by all the architects there because it has a lighting system made by Guy Olenti, which, by the way, was given a prize for the career during this very edition of the Triennale Medaglia d'Oro. And everybody hates that because mostly of the time they just don't use it and put other lights. When they don't have money, they have to use that lighting system. But I love it because it's so random that it creates another design on your design, and I love it. I love when something happens by chance and you have to deal with that. So you have to change the chance. So we played with this light, which wasn't what normally should happen here. We have very long shadows, but I think they could work, so we created the distance to have even more shadow. And here we didn't have shadow because the light is different, so we created a design that was already given the sensation of a shadow. This is another exhibition that we did at, another show that we did in Palazzo Reale, which is very close to Piazza del Duomo and Museo del Novecento. And it's about a painter from the Rinascimento Italiano, which is called Artemisia Gentileschi. And what happened, I show you this because it's quite an interesting story. The client called us, the client is another publisher called 24 Ore Cultura. They called us and they gave us a brief for this exhibition, and then they asked us to do the first presentation in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So we started to work, and then after 10 days they called us and they said, you should come earlier, you should come tomorrow to show us what you did. So I normally do 2 or 3 different
two or three proposals. But when I had to
2 or 3 proposals. But when I have to give the presentation earlier than what is supposed, I have more material, not less, because I didn't do editing. The reason why I come with 3 proposals is because I started a lot of stuff. So I said to them, I have a lot of stuff, so I cannot give you 3 proposals but more. And they were kind of freaked out because they said, what are you saying? That normally we give you less time and you give give us more stuff.
So I went to them with this tableau.
I went to them with this tableau, this big paper with a lot of sketches started to do with research and sketches, bits and pieces that we found around during the research. And
of course they choose. We presented 8 proposals.
Of course they choose. We presented 8 proposals.
And then they choose to follow one.
And then they choose to follow one of them, which is related to this, the last tableau. This is
to use a capital letter, big letter.
To use a capital letter, big letter.
That comes from a redesign of a typeface
that I designed, which is called Blueberry Pancake.
I just designed a few
typefaces. It's a very hard job.
Andrea that designed the lowercase that wasn't. Just did
the lowercase. That wasn't my job. I just did
we designed the light. I designed the light.
We designed the light. I designed the light.
And then I designed the board, and I made this.
And then I designed the board, and I made this. How to translate? I'm looking to James because the only one that subtraction. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, it's quite easy to see. But
so I designed all these capital letters.
I designed all these capital letters to be used as a logo. The A was used by the logo as a logo for the invitation and the communication.
We did a teaser.
We did a teaser advertising campaign just with the A, hiding the painting. And of course, the next advertising campaign in September that was with the painting. We designed the book.
The whole identity and the catalog.
The whole identity and the catalog. Yeah, I have the catalog here. Have a look.
Which is quite different from the other.
Wait. which is quite
What we like to do here was related also
what we like to do here was related also to the exhibition. We worked for the exhibition design with scenographer and director of an Italian theater director, woman from Sicily,
and she helped us to
around the world,
build
and she helped us to
and she
build
pointed
the exhibition.
really strongly
And she
underlined
pointed
the dramatic,
really strongly
history
under
of
the dramatical and tragic
and
history of
together with
together with Frederick Levac and Dr. Pisani, which did the architectural part of the design of the exhibition, worked a lot on block.
So we decided to have this red. Of course, we couldn't.
So we decided to have this red. Of course, we couldn't
So we
do
decided to have this
catalog
red
or
inside,
So we decided to have this red inside.
and it's
You see
giving like
from
a
the roof,
strange
and
kind
it's
of
giving like
shadow,
a strange kind of shadow on the border of the book.
and here about my.
And here about
What I was saying before is that you can
what I was
see
saying before is that you can
all the
see
time that we spent together.
all the time that we
working
spent
on typography and details. That is
working on
really
typography
our
and details. That is really our
And this was
obsession.
the exhibition, really dark and really.
And this was the exhibition, really dark and really dramatic, as the life of Artemisia Gentileschi was.
Of course, you can see now the details on typography, but
Of course, you can't see now the details on typography, but you see the overall exhibition.
for Expo 2015, so
For Expo 2015, so the Expo that just opened in May, the 1st of May,
presenting the new
2 years ago, presenting the new Expo Gate in Cairoli,
which is this big building that you can probably see.
which is this big building that you could probably see also today.
Which is this one. We were asked
Which is
to
this one.
create an exhibition.
We were asked to create
So we just
a very
went
little
on the
So we just went from the
the storage of the Triennale and we found out
the storage of the Triennale, and we found out tables and other stuff we could use, and we did the exhibition
we had
what
to
we
make
found,
catalog. We did it
and
with this
we had to make a catalog, and we did it with this
look.
kind of newspaper
And this is
look.
the exhibition. We just used
This is the exhibition. We just used very little
But the
material.
result was quite fine because we
But the result was quite fine because we made
keep together the look and feel of the
together
space
the look and feel of the space and the paper object.
This was the exhibition about
This was the exhibition about the pitch that they gave to for the different architects.
joint competition. So they were all the projects were shown.
Competition. So they were all the projects were shown in the Triennale. And of course, the winning one was shown apart here.
We work also for
We work also for archaeological exhibition.
and
Really
we were asked to work on the exhibition about
we were asked to work on the exhibition about
the Villa Briana
at the Villa Briana in Tivoli. Not far
I
from
don't know if you know that the Villa Briana was the
I don't know if you know that the
place
Villa
where
Briana was
Briano
the
and Antino, which was
place
his
where
boyfriend,
Briano and
used to live
Antino,
and,
which was his boyfriend, used to
imagine
live and
wonderful
spend
time
can imagine
in a place which
wonderful
is
times the place which is whatever you do that inside the place less important than the taste. Just saying Villa Adriana in Tivoli is.
Then we were asked to work on.
Then we were asked to work on
the history and the life of
the history and the life of Antino. Is Italy, and the representation that we have today of the Antino is this statue and a few others, but this is the most beautiful. And they asked us to create an exhibition and communication around this picture.
So I remember that when we started to set it's quite difficult.
I remember that when we started to set it's quite difficult to show something which is so strongly physical and three-dimensional on paper.
And what we decided
how can we do?
Simple. We copied.
And what we decided was quite simple. We copied something that was Picasso.
Found a way to show
Picasso
the three dimensions.
Found a way to show the three dimensions
in
a particular way. And so we
had to create
then we have to create
an impression of
we wanted to give an impression of an archaeological exhibition
so we tried
with
to
less dust on it. So we tried to
create something more contemporary.
To create something more contemporary,
with the history
keeping
a
link with the
So we started with the Trajan.
So we started with the Trajan that
found a way to
and we found a way to let's say
taking off the
cleaning up
serifs
a bit,
and creating
taking off the serifs and creating just a different kind of optima, if you like, from Trajan. We called it B-Trajan because we betrayed Trajan. And so it's called B-Trajan.
And this is the catalog and the identity of
and
the exhibition.
this is the catalog and the identity
You see,
of the
we had
exhibition.
these three pictures from different points of view.
You see, we had these three pictures from different points of view of the statue, and we decided to use them all together in the same picture, as Picasso would have done, probably. It could be.
And we use different parts, with kind of a random puzzle approach.
Kind of a random puzzle
The result was creating
approach.
a feeling of
But the result was
contemporary,
creating a feeling of contemporarity outside an archaeological exhibition.
And this is the exhibition itself inside the Villa Adriana.
And this is the exhibition itself inside the Villa Adriana, which is a fantastic place also inside.
Okay, I work since 2009,
I
so
since 2009, so 2008, especially before the museum opened, for the Museo del Novecento, which is here. I don't know if they go to the Museo del Novecento. Normally students don't go to the museums in the city they belong to. Did you go there?
Okay, so this is the Museo del Novecento. I started to work for
Okay, so this is the Museo del Novecento. I started to work for the museum when it opened, and I still
I don't want to talk about the long process of the
I don't want to talk about the long process of the identity that we created for the Museo del Novecento, because it will take
1 hour just to be told.
they just 1 hour just to code.
Things on the
And there's a few things on the internet where you can get.
This is the identity. I'll just show you a few pictures.
But this is the identity. Just show you a few pictures. And what I want to show to you is a couple of exhibitions we did inside the Museo del Novecento. because part of the
is
we need
to provide consistency within
is
different
to
exhibitions
provide
inside the,
consistency within
say,
different
building of
exhibitions
the
inside
museum.
the,
First step
say,
was
the
to
building
create
of the
the
Museo della
identity of the
Ricerca. So
museum, and
the
then
first step was to create the identity of the
consistency
museum, and then to keep
the identity of the museum,
consistency
what is happening inside the museum.
the identity of the
So the first
museum.
exhibition was this one.
So the first
About,
exhibition was this one, about
so public art, if you like. So
arte
art
pubblica,
that
so public
leaves
art,
the museums and the
art
galleries and
that
goes to the people
leaves the
outside.
museums and the galleries and goes to people outside.
There was a
There was a moment in art, between 1967 and 1973, I guess, also.
Where a group of artists, not only Italian, also French,
Group of artists, not only Italian but also French, Christophe, for instance,
decided to leave the space of the
Italian,
museums,
decided to leave the space of the museums and to bring art to the people, with the people, to dealing with the space.
image that
So
really,
this is one
I found
image
really
that really
for many reasons.
I found
And
really
it was
interesting
kind of a driver
for many
for the,
reasons, and it was kind of a driver for the identity of the
The
museum.
exhibition was called Arte Pubblica in Italia,
The exhibition was called Arte Pubblica in Italia, 1967, 1967.
So
That was so public art in
what we did
Italy.
in the beginning was to say, okay,
What we did at the beginning was to say, okay, we are a museum which claim to be a place where
not just the people that
normal citizens
we want
go,
people that
not just the people that
walks around the
people
museum
that walks around the museum
actually get inside.
became curious and actually get inside.
To really
We wanted
so we said if we call it in a very distant,
so we said if we call it in a very distant, in a way that keeps the distance, instead of
so we decided
calling people, we make a mistake. So we decided to give which is fuori, which was more
and we have the subtitle Arte Spazio Urbano,
and to have the subtitle Arte Spazio Urbano 1968-1967. So
then we did a research on the way
then we did a research on the way art was exhibited during that very time.
we found a catalog made
And we found a catalog made by Munari, done with serigraphy, and very the cover with serigraphy and system.
So sistering, and the inside was just made
So
by
sistering,
Xerox
and the inside was just made by Xerox copies on
So we decided to keep that
color
kind
paper.
of feeling.
So we decided to keep that kind of feeling, that
cheap
idea of a very cheap representation of
and to do the same for the catalog.
a page,
So we did
and to do the same for the
different
catalog.
colors,
So we
different
did
pictures,
a catalog with
and
different colors, different
done in a very
pictures,
cheap way,
and
not
done in a
really
very cheap way, no, not
just
really
kept
binded,
together
but just kept together with elastic. Okay. Broadband. Okay.
Okay, so that's the catalog.
Okay, so that's the catalog. This is the exhibition. We played a lot with the idea inside, outside, which is already the idea that was the driver for everything was playing with inside, outside. So as you can see, the O became a window between the exhibition, that was separating the exhibition from the outside, so people could actually look inside the exhibition and from inside could see the outside.
Because we felt a little bit guilty that we brought back
We felt a little bit
inside
that we brought back the artist
And also
inside
the
also the
text were just glued on the wall, like it
text
was
were
on the
just
street.
glued on the wall, like it was on the streets at that time.
Another totally different exhibition made in
Another totally different exhibition made in Museo del Novecento was a photography exhibition. There's the catalog here.
The exhibition was about
The exhibition was
theme of the
about
exhibition was conversation. So the
the
idea of the
exhibition
curator
was
was
conversation.
keep
So
two
the
different
idea of the
pictures
curator was
and
to
open a
keep
discussion
two different
conversation
pictures
between
and
them.
open a
Even though
discussion
they are
conversation.
not the same from the same
Even though
photographer
they
or
are
not from the
not
same
the same
period,
from the same
but to
photographer
really
or
create
not
like
the
a
same
kind of a
period,
crash.
but to really create
together
like a
two
kind of a
pictures.
crash,
And also
put it together
of this
two
curator,
pictures.
and he was lucky enough
The idea
to have
of this
a
curator, and he was lucky enough to
collection where to pick
wide
out the pictures.
collection where to pick up the pictures, which is the collection of the Bank of America.
Biggest collection outside of
The
the museum.
biggest collection outside of the
New York.
Museum of America in New York.
And it's been done by the same curator in the beginning of
And has been done by the same
Before
curator
the Second
at the beginning of the
Anyway, this is
before the Second
this
World
was
War.
the idea.
Anyway,
We
this
decided
is
to,
this was the idea. We decided to break the title, so conversation, in two, as it was like the pictures. There were two titles to be seen as one side of the other. And this idea of two layers, even though there's not two layers, it's just paper, it's just a little shadow.
This was quite interesting in the street because you had
This was quite interesting in the street because you had these posters around the street that created this quite strange feeling of posters on another. And this is even more interesting because the background is also a background. So I love when chance comes and creates a new design from yours. And that's quite
This was inside the museum, so still.
This was inside the museum, so we still play with these two parts of the world.
Just very simple.
Also create
And
shapes.
I like the idea that two letters
And I like the idea that the two letters are probably not obeying, not really polite, and they do whatever they want. So the R and the S go out from the
exhibition, fantastic pictures. Never
this
been
exhibition,
in the same place.
fantastic pictures. I've never seen in the same place so many original pictures.
Almost the history of
Telling in particular almost the history of
we use the space to play with letters.
We use the space to play with letters in big
Every
dimensions.
time we do an exhibition at the Museo del Novecento,
Every time we do an exhibition at the Museo del Novecento, we use a passepartout typeface, which is Avenir, which is the typeface of the logo of the Museo del Novecento. And then we take another one to play together. So we still have consistency maintained by one typeface, and every time we pick another one to play with it. And this time was time for Futura condensed, as you can see.
Okay. So
Okay.
the third dogma that I want to question
The
is
third dogma that I want to
the
question
difference between analog and digital.
is the difference between analog and digital.
What I want to say is that since analog
What I want to say is that since analog hides another term, which
for me
is,
there's no solutions.
for me there's no solution of the continuity between what you do in the real world. space, paper, and in the digital world. So for me, also digital can be analog. This is quite a philosophical reaction, probably very to be sustained, but I like to say it anyway.
I show you the last project we did for.
I show you the last project we did for
Giorgio Armani, which is not a museum.
Museum of Giorgio Armani.
Every time we said museum, we were said.
Every time we said museum, we were
Is a space.
Giorgio Armani says a space. As Giorgio Armani says, a cultural space. That means, but.
And we were asked to.
And we were asked to participate to a pitch, to a competition for digital identity.
And we went there with
we didn't understand. And we went there with the overall project of identity.
It was quite strange.
And
Difficult.
it was quite strange.
We had people in front of us.
Because we had people in front of us.
But again, we were very lucky because we won the pitch for the digital
very lucky because we
and we
won the
convinced
pitch
that
for the
our
digital
project was so
identity.
good
And
that
we
the corporate
convinced them
identity
that
guy
our
told
project
us
was good.
that
The corporate identity guy called us and said,
of course,
"You want to work with us?"
why not? So we did that.
Of course. Why not?
Of course,
So we did everything.
people inside the Armani.
Of course, with the people inside
This is
Armani.
the place. I mean, these are the first rendering.
This is the place. I mean, these are the first rendering, the first sketches came out from the architects.
What we did here,
What we did here,
hours,
people from the studio that can remember hours, not days, where we
keep the images
was
made by the
to
architects and
keep the
change it
images
a bit
made by
because they
the
were
architects
very, very
and change it a little bit because they were
So we changed the sky, we
dramatically
changed the
sad.
colors, which
So we changed the sky, we changed the colors, we put different trees and so on. And everything, what you see now, which is not reality, but
we did, I don't know if this will work because
we did. I don't know if this will work now because before
what we did in the beginning, the presentation was to try
what we did in the
and
beginning,
show
the presentation
to our
was
client
to try
what
and
we had in
show
mind
to our
when we
client
thought about
what we
space
had in
for
mind
the
when we
collection
thought
of
about
40
the space
years
for the collection
We wanted
of
something
Giorgio Armani. We wanted
could
something
create a bridge
that
between what happened
could create a bridge between
to a man that today is
40 years ago to a man that today is
what is happening today. So we did
and
this
today
just
what is happening today. So we did just now this little animation to show that now will probably don't work. In fact, that's it. No. Okay.
3, 2, 1.
It's quite short, so 3, 2, 1. Everybody is there. It's very short.
So that small
That
was just
small
to show that
video was
probably
just to show
little changes
probably
in terms of this
little changes in terms of
was
this.
already
In this way case,
if you choose
was
apparat instead
already
of
music. So if you choose apparat
classical
instead
music
of
or 80s music or something like
classical music
Concerti,
or
everything becomes contemporary,
Concerti,
more contemporary.
everything becomes contemporary, more contemporary, and you can accept something like a very classical identity, just using music for as a kick to bring you to a more contemporary world. And of course they didn't use it, but it was already enough to break a wall between us and them and to understand where we wanted to go. This was the campaign they did, also on magazines and so on. Giorgio Armani didn't want to show the silos before it was finished, and I can tell you it was finished probably 1 minute before the opening, and so it was also impossible to show it. And so we were asked to design this sketch showing the silos in a very, let's say, imaginative or I don't know, very particular way. So not rendering, not sketches, real sketches, something really that can give the idea but not really showing in too much. So the space is this. Outside is just gray. I heard someone inside Armani call the material not cemento armato but cemento Armani, which is a new material that he loves, which is because it's gray. And these are a few pictures of the place. I think that you will probably go and see it. This is the entrance. Is a old silos. Is an old place, a place where they used to keep food and grano, wheat. As you can see here, we used the two typefaces that Giorgio Armani has in his identity, which are the Armani typeface, which is a kind of a Didot, then the real Didot, redesigned for Armani, and a kind of Futura design in a version which is slightly different from the normal Futura that you can buy through Adobe and others. But at the end of the day, Didot and Futura. So we did the signage system with metal and this white Futura. We created these objects, three-dimensional objects in metal for the main titles for every floor. Every floor has a theme, which is in this case the ground floor, the zero floor, which has a theme which is day wear. There's a text in Italian and English, and every time you have on this part, a legenda of what happens on all the different floors. These are the signage for the elevators, outside the elevators, and these are other signage that can help you go around the place. And then, of course, we did all the design for the website, which is a very functional website. You can buy the tickets and see where's the place, have a look to something of the collection, but just a small view of the collection, because the real collection, the entire collection, is possible to be seen on the digital archive, which is only available inside the museum. Here you can choose your date and buy your ticket and so on. So this is the digital archive. It's on the last floor of the museum, the third floor. And there you can find also Heineken, and you can consult you can stay there for how many hours you want if you are a student and create a research. And you have there all the drawings, all the pictures of 40 years of Giorgio Armani collections. And this was a huge work that we did. Unfortunately, Federica, which is another of the group of the designers of the studio, is not here today, but she did a lot for this part. It's huge. It's really huge. And you can just call or go on the website and make a request and go there and spend how much time you like to make your research and see all the history of Giorgio Armani. Okay, I finished with two more works. First one is not yet visible outside, is not online. And is a work done by for Ishi Trading, is a company in Singapore, and they sell to the Asian market, on the Eastern market, Italian products from Burano, Vicenza, and all the places where the Italian craftsmen produce high quality objects and products. And the name is of the brand is Stories of Italy, and this is the logo. The words that we use as lines for the logo, for separating, like underlining the logo, are changing every time. So depending on the contest, they change. So when you have a product coming from Vicenza, there are some words. If you have glass, there are some other words, and so on. We used again Bitrayan, that now we love. We just use it for the work of Antino, and now we really love it. And together with Futura and Actadec. Very weird kind of let's say, company, but we like weird association between typefaces. We create the color palette related to the products because we work together with the designer of the products, and this is quite interesting because we really created like a common environment for developing the project. And this is just the beginning of the project, as you can see. We designed also we are designing, now in the process of designing the website, which is a mix between a real website and a blog. So there's interviews and presentation of the product and the presentation of the products on the real environment. I like this website that we are building because it's like the exhibition of a table more than a digital environment. Okay, the last work that I want to present, and there's a guy here laughing because he knows the project very well. He is the one, is the designer that developed all the project, and is a magazine done for iPad together with photographer Cesare Ciccardini, and we started to work on this project. I think 3-4 years ago, and since it's a no-profit project, we're doing that for ourselves. Is taking forever, but is now done, hopefully, and so this is just my advertising moment. It will be for free, so it's not that big advertising. It's called Chance. Chance is this logo actually is designed by the same designer of the blueberry pancake, as I said before. And this is a few pages of the old project. I didn't show the new one because this is the numero zero, I call it the pilot. And now we have the first number, the first issue that will be outside on the App Store, hopefully for the summer. And so if you want to check it out, you go on the App Store, let's say in July, and you can have it for free and see if you like it or not. It's all about photography, contemporary photography, and there's also a part where if you are a photographer can contribute and sending materials, and there's interviews and other stuff. And in the last issue we have many writers like Stefano Benni and other Munoz, a few writers that wrote text, not critics of photography, but really writers writing about photography. And that's it. I mistaken intentionally a quote from Kevin Cruz saying that design is about making an impact, not making an income, because that's what I think. I think that making an income is fantastic, but is another job, is making business, and I hope I will be able to make a business, big business in the future, but in the same time, I just want to leave you with this sentence, partially from Kevin Cruz. And I think that I finished. So if you have questions. I have to apologize for my poor English today, particularly with with English speakers, because I'm quite tired, and Silvia knows that I came from Paris this morning, where we open in January our new business, and it takes a lot of time and energy, and I don't have that much. Thank you, son.
But maybe even if Massimo is a little bit tired, he will be happy to answer some of your questions. So, are you? Okay, he confirms, so I'm not lying. And whoever is curious of knowing more about this project, or in general, I think his design approach, is welcome to make a question. Well, I'll start with mine in the meantime, which is, you just mentioned the fact that you were called by Armani just to... Do you hear? It's on. Okay. You mentioned the fact that you were asked by Armani to design just the digital identity. And while on the other side you stressed from the beginning that you like to work on identities as a whole. So how often do you have to cope with this weird situation where you're expected to take care of just a little bit of a, and how difficult it is to move to the next step?
Yeah. It's an interesting question, because years ago, when we started to have the first experience for digital branding and digital design, actually more than branding, we normally didn't go that far for digital, because we were asked to design a website, and I don't design websites. And what we started to do well was to consider the digital design as part of the branding. And that's really challenging, and that's what I love to do. And I think if there's something that I can bring to a project is from the strategic point of view, not from the aesthetical point of view. I'm not a digital designer. I'm not even an editorial designer. I'm a designer, so I think that I love to approach a brand from the very beginning, if I can, or even in critical moments, like for rebranding. I don't like to just design a website when everything else has already been done, because that's not my job. I mean, there's people that does that very well, and they are cheaper than I am. So I think that the client has no reason to come to me when it's about designing a website. I think that is fantastic when I have a chance to do the overall project. So the reason why we did this for Giorgio Armani is because we've been asked to participate to a competition that we didn't understand. And that's our fortune, that we didn't understand. So we went there giving a presentation of the whole process, and as I told before, they were quite surprised, but at the end they bought it. So we were lucky. But normally, I don't know if I probably would have do it anyway if I would have understood. I mean, if Giorgio Armani or Paul Smith ask you to do the website, of course you do the website. I mean, but in general, I will avoid to do that. Yeah. Did I answer your question? Yeah. There's other questions? Also silly questions, because so I can give you just yes and no answers. Like, oh, how old are you? I will not tell you, but anyway. No, if you have any question, just do it.
My other question is, knowing you since a long time, I know that you, your career was a bit changing over the years, and you had a period at a big international branding agency. So how did this change your approach? Because then you previously had another design studio, and then you went back to working independently. And how did this change your approach?
Okay, since I know Silvia, since probably it's 20 years almost that we know each other, 17. Yeah, I think that's close to 17. I should say something to the audience because they probably don't know what you are talking about. I used to do different things before opening my own business in 2006. I had my first agency with other two partners, doing mainly music, working for the music business and the entertainment business for MTV and different record companies and so on until year 2000. And then in year 2000 I started a new job as creative director of Landor, that is an American company that does branding. And then I retired for a while because I had a son and I decided to live in the country, and I came back to Landor in 2005, I guess. Yeah. And even though my experience in Landor wasn't that fantastic, I had to admit, I learned a lot. And I don't regret it. I mean, don't regret that I did it, because I think that people in Italy is not really into the branding idea. They're not even the people that are working as CEO of branding agencies. But I think there's a lot of good in the process and in the strategic approach that a branding agency has. So I wouldn't have been able to do the project for the Museo del Novecento without the experience that I made in Landor. Because with that experience, knowing the strategic platform for a brand identity process, and during 2 years of experience with students, both in Politecnico and in another private school that I don't want to say here because I'm in a private school, I developed a methodology that I applied to the Museo del Novecento, which is totally different business from Barilla or the other or a bank, so that the average, the kind of standard client for a branding agency. It took me 2 years with the help of students to develop a method that could work for the cultural environment. But it has been proved that it works, and I'm using it again for other, let's say, cultural clients working on the cultural environment. And I think that I learned that through the experience that I had in Landor. I think that I probably used different experience in the best way to be able to create in 2006 this agency. Come on, you don't have an answer, a question. Just tell me an answer, I do the question. I keep saying to my students, I started to teach almost 17, 18 years ago. I keep saying to my students that there are no silly questions. There are definitely silly answers, but there's no silly questions. So any question is fine. The answer can be silly. So just go. We have a few minutes if you want. Are you starving? You want to go and eat and have a drink? Or did I say everything? Wow, I'm proud of myself. You have a question?
Which magazines are some examples for which we should look with a good layout and a good design? Probably, what magazines can you recommend us to look at?
Okay, did you hear the question? Down there? No. So your, I don't know, your name? Maria? Ah, easy. Maria asked me which magazine will I recommend for her and for you to have a look for the layout and the design that I like, I think. You ask my opinion, not the general, because I don't have the general opinion about magazines, but I strongly have mine. And the answer would be, okay, I designed a magazine which is called Flash Art International, and I put all that I think about good layout there and good typography. I used Sabon Next for the whole magazine. I did it together with Maci Taiber, which is the art director, and I will recommend you an issue of the international Flash Art, not the Italian Flash Art, which is done copying the international project, but in a different way that I don't like. Looking at the international magazine or general, there's a magazine that I love a lot, which is Cereal, you know that, which is quite interesting. I will recommend you Officiel Art, the French magazine Officiel, you know, the fashion magazine. They had a magazine which is called Officiel Art, is talking about art, and it's quite nice and well done, and it's done by a friend, which is Aldo Buscalferri in Paris, and I like it a lot. I love Port, that you probably already buy. You know Port magazine? Okay. I like Gentlewoman. I think the Gentlewoman is very well done. Of course, I like Monocle, but I find it very boring. But you can say anything wrong about Monocle. It's well done. It's just boring. What else? And I would recommend something. If you have to spend money for one book every year, just one book, about graphic design, you should buy the Art Directors Club of America, of the United States, the Type Directors Club catalog. Every year they produce a catalog. Type Directors Club of New York produces a catalog. I don't know if the is overall United States or just New York. Anyway, you find it out. And the reason why I keep saying to my students to buy that book is because it's the only one where you can actually see what kind of typeface has been used for every project which is presented. Every project has a list, has a caption, where you can actually see the typeface that has been used. And that's the best way to learn, to copy. You have to copy. You have to see a project that you love, you see that it's made with Caslon or Futura, and you try and do it. And that is where you learn about lettering, because lettering is not choosing the right typeface. Is learn how to use it, which is totally different job. And when you copy a page done with a typeface that you already have on your computer, and you go on that page and you try to do it, you discover what is spacing, what is tracking, what is everything that it is in manuals. You see it on your own, and you know how to do it next time. So buy that book and copy it, every single page. Is the catalog, the annual of the Type Directors Club of America, the United States. TDC annual. You just type TDC annual on the internet and it will come. And you can buy all dishes at a very cheap price on the internet, on Amazon and so on. I think it's like $50, more or less, the last issue. Other questions?
I wanted to know, what's the role of the paper in your projects? I mean, like, does it have some sort of a main role, or is just hiding behind the contents?
About Beppe Giacobbe around. Anyway, did you have a, okay, did you, yeah. The role of paper is fundamental. I mean, it's like the role of plastic for Alessi or steel for Alessi. I mean, it's the very matter, the very material where you can play. It's like your stage. If you are a performer, you have your stage, and you have to decide how to do the mise en scène, so the exhibition, or how to create the environment for your play. And paper is the environment for your play, for your performance. So choosing the right paper can dramatically change everything in a project. When it's about a book, this is evident, as possible to see very well. But when it's about corporate identity, nowadays it's very difficult to create a letterhead. I mean, you just design it every time, but most of the time you don't produce it. No, it's very difficult that a company asks you to really produce the letterhead. They ask you to design it, and then they don't use it. They just ask you the PDF, and that's it. And so mostly of the letterhead of different companies are just with the Xerox paper, 80 grams, and that's it. So that's a pity. I think that Hewlett-Packard and Xerox should pay more attention to this, and they don't. But I think that paper has a very dramatical role. You see the book of Beppe Giacobbe and the catalog of Artemisia Gentileschi. Why the catalog of Artemisia is done with that paper is so heavy? because the publisher is thinking that if it's not heavy, people will not consider that value for money. When you go to an exhibition and you are a lady on your 60 and you want to buy the catalog, you go to the catalog, and if you feel that it's really heavy, that's worth your money. And that's stupid, silly. I hope the new generation will not consider that a value. For instance, we can consider that a problem, not a value, because more paper, less trees, and so that's the problem. I mean, probably we should pay more attention to what we do with paper as designers. There's a nice, an interesting book dealing with this matter. I don't remember the title now. It's a small book talking about how we as graphic designer can improve the environment or reduce the impact, the negative impact on the environment through the use of paper, the right inks, the right colors, because color become inks, and inks are more or less bad for the environment depending on the color. For instance, I guess that reds are more polluting than blue. Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in the right producer, because there's producer like Sappi that are doing, they are growing their own trees and changing them every time. Fedrigoni has a strong policy because they are international, they're very big, and so they have big controls on the whole chain of production, so they definitely are aware of what they do with the environment. Yeah.
When you start working with a new brand, not the new, I mean with a certain brand, and when do you take the direction to follow the brand identity, and when you try to make something more appealing or something different and to try to change the direction of the company at the moment? How to make this decision?
When I'm asked to do it, this is the short version now, I give you the long one. But when a client asks me to change, I change. If a client doesn't ask me for a change, I decide if they need a change, and then I go back and I suggest a change anyway, or else I accept. I just make the example now. For Giorgio Armani, we didn't have a real reason to change the identity coding. Typefaces was, I mean, the typeface was okay. Didot, perfect. Futura, perfect. The color palette was perfect, was fine. We didn't have any problem with that. Then we had a problem sometimes. For instance, if you go in the museum, you see the captions. The spacing between letters is not something that we choose. We were totally against that, but we had to accept it. Sometimes it's a matter of rapporti di forza. Who's the strongest on the deal, on the battle? The strongest wins. Anyway, in general, I don't change if the client doesn't want to change, until I don't think that a change is necessary. I was talking before about a museum. Actually, are 6 different museums in Italy about food. Every museum is doing one kind of food. And they asked us to participate to a pitch for the designing of the catalog, of the 6 different catalogs. The pictures were so bad that we suggested to do a new shooting for all the museums, and also there were some problems with the identity of singular museum, singular museums. So we asked that, and the client said, no, we want to use the material that you saw, and we said, okay, we don't work, we don't do it, because there's not a chance to do a good job. So sometimes we make statements and we say, no, we don't work, or unless you don't leave us to change something, sometimes we just can't. And for these museums, we are not going to work. So depending on the circumstances.
How do you think design works or operates here in Milan or Italy compared to other European cities, especially France? Because you opened a new branch in France. So how do you see design operates, or what's the main difference of how people work in Italy and compared to France?
Okay, Sylvia and I were starting our professions when graphic design in Italy wasn't that good. I mean, we had a fantastic history. I mean, the names of the rooms of this school are saying that kind of history. So design in the 50s, in the 60s, even before in the 30s in Italy was really meaning something. But then we had the 80s and the beginning of the 90s probably, where Italy didn't really produce the greatest graphic designers. When we started, we decided strongly to go back to the roots, the very roots of the Italian graphic design from the 60s, from the 70s, and even before, to restart a new, let's say, scene for graphic design. And today, thanks to us in part, but thanks to the general system of the education, Politecnico, the private schools altogether, the average level of graphic design in Italy became quite high. So the competition is a nice competition. I love this competition. I love that when I'm asked to participate to a competition, there's people very good compared to that are fighting with me, because mostly of the people are friends anyway. And I think that Italy in these days, in these years, is producing a very good level of graphic design. The problem is that if you go around the city, you don't see much of that good graphic design, because mostly of the production is done by advertising agencies and also people which are claiming to do graphic design because they have a Mac or a PC. But that's another question. So I think that the level of Italian graphic design is quite good. There's very good professionals, very good schools. The environment and is changing. France. In France, there's two kinds of graphic designers. The graphic designers for fashion, and the graphic designers, which are a few, but very good, very talented, and the graphic designers that work for the public institution and cultural institution, which sometimes are very good. The difference between Italian and French graphic designers are related to the history of graphic design. In Italy, we are strongly related to industry. In France, they are strongly related to art. So a graphic designer is seen as an artist in France. It's closer to what is happening in the United States somehow, even stronger than what is happening there. In Italy, a graphic designer is a professional, doing applied art, if you like, if you go back to the history, but not an artist. And is more a designer, is closer to a product designer, to interior designer. In France, is closer to a sculpture or scultore, sì, sculpture, or a painter, as seen by the society and also by the designer consider themselves artists. Also for financial and other reasons, they are mostly considered and compared to artists. So that's create a difference. I think that the average level in Italy is higher, and I think that in Paris in particular there's very good graphic designer, but the average level is lower. That's talking about these two countries. And that's why I went there. Other questions?
Okay, my question is, do you think that all the work that you have done belongs to a specific school of, like, you know, like in 80s, the rationalist school and all those stuff? Do you think that all your products belongs to a new school of art, or just are making part of a trendy wave?
Oh, that's quite hard. It's hard to say because normally these are the things that are being said by other people on your job. It's very difficult to judge your own job in this kind of terms. I can tell you what is my vision and approach. About the result, I will leave the answer to you. My approach is, probably this is too much. No, you know that I'm curious about things, about life, about everything. I love to try at least once any kind of food, at least once a lot of stuff apart from drugs. But anyway, I like to discover. And the same approach that I have in general life, I have for graphic design. So if I never tried, my goal would be to do a good work, a good project with Comic Sans. That would be fantastic. I would love to do that. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding, because I'm sure somewhere in the space there's a good project for Comic Sans. I never found it yet, but I think there is, because I'm very curious and I want to try everything. If I look at something, I want to try and do it to see how it works. So I don't know if I belong to any kind of trend. I don't have masters rooted only in one moment of the history of graphic design. I love, of course, Munari. I love the Studio Buggeri. I love also Roger Escoffon. I used to love people like Neville Brody in the 80s, and David Carson too. Nowadays, I look around and I see very good and talented designers. I find more curious and interesting things in the north of Europe and in the very south of Europe, for instance, in Turkey or in Lebanon, sometimes, more than in England or in Switzerland. But I'm very curious about everything that happens, and every time I think that this job will never end, because there's always new ideas. Sometimes I hear things like, okay, in graphic design everything has been done. This is bullshit, totally bullshit. There's a lot to do, and a lot of that every day is done in a very interesting way. And I'm curious. I don't know if I will stop and think that I arrived to some place. I think that I'm still learning. I'm still improving my way of doing things. So that's my approach. I don't have a receipt for myself. I don't know if I answered your question. Yeah, I do. Thanks.
Well, if anybody, any more questions? Well, thank you for answering, not just for presenting, and for being here, and see you. There's a whole calendar of new lectures in the next weeks. I especially recommend you the lecture that will be held here on the 3rd of June with Harald Dunning from Monkai, a very interesting digital agency from the Netherlands. So we will switch to a different approach and have a look at all the other lectures in the product and industrial design field, which are going to be in the next week here at SPD. Thank you.